DreamWorks Animation has had a very uneven decade. While it thrived reasonably in series, in the theaters, even with the critical darlings of Kung Fu Panda and the Dragon trilogies, it hasn't been able to sustain them financially the way the Shrek series did in the previous decade. As a result, there were massive layoffs, they had to move in with their obnoxiously more successful cousin, and they had to cut ties with their overseas sweethearts, which today's film was basically their last quickie. Said sweetheart is the previously named Oriental DreamWorks, a 2012 Shanghai branch that was a 45-55 partnership between DreamWorks and various Chinese investors that was recently bought out by CMC and is now called Pearl Studios, stating that they will focus on projects that have international appeal because they, especially China, are making more money at the box office than the US is. Feel free to correct me if I got any of that wrong. Which brings us to Abominable, the most inaccurate title for a movie maybe ever, because Pele dammit, we need those super generic one-word titles. You couldn't even go with Abominable? Joining the childhood adventure club with E.T., Next Gen, and Iron Giant, Abominable is about Yi, who finds an adorable escaped Yeti, and with the help of her friends goes on a journey to return him to his home in Everest, while avoiding the pursuits of a greedy billionaire. That's kinda it in terms of story. There is not a lot of new stuff here. Would it shock you to know that Yi is struggling with the loss of her father, and that the younger of her friends is all silly and gung-ho about helping the Yeti while the older is super logical and fervently against it? It's definitely a template that doesn't have the world's most amazing dialogue, but it still manages to be a worthwhile family film regardless for a few reasons. Firstly, it may take some time for them to grow on you, but the main three kids are likable enough. Yi is reserved, standoffish, impulsive, and some of the decisions she makes really don't make sense, which seems about right for a teenager, especially one that's grieving. She is handling it way better than Mei. Peng is the optimistic goofball whose voice definitely changed at some point during production, but his playful background interactions with Everest the Yeti are actually some of the most endearing character moments in the film. He honestly seems to have a closer connection with the Yeti than Yi does, especially since she apparently needs to chinwag with Jin every 5 minutes. Who is the predictable wet blanket for a while, but it's a good balancing act the way his character is mildly self-absorbed and shallow, but still smart, caring, and charismatic. Plus, when the film shifts from its mostly grounded tone to suddenly this fast-paced cartoony montage, he becomes straight up hilarious for 2 minutes. Mostly the comedy is very sparingly and smartly implemented, just enough to liven up the movie for a second, but does nothing too much or too obnoxious. Like, there's this snake joke that pops up maybe 3 times and doesn't go anywhere. It's so nothing in terms of the story, but it's so random that it just kinda works. Though predictably, the most childish jokes are the ones in the trailer. There's also this trio of the billionaire's goons that are just the right amount of comic relief. Dude, you darted Dave! And then the captain, who I'm positive if Patrick Warburton wasn't their initial voice pick, they told the actor to imitate him almost exactly. Even the greedy billionaire has his moments. There's also a mild twist where the villains are concerned. It's nothing too major, it's revealed pretty early on, but I thought, that doesn't happen too often. But if there's really one thing that makes this movie worth watching, it is that it is a beautiful movie. Yes, it generally has very appealing character design, and Everest especially is basically just a giant kitten. But guys, the landscapes, the nature, the colors, the cinematography, this makes the New Zealand shots in Lord of the Rings jealous. And Makoto Shinkai has nothing to worry about, but it's not too far off. Even the cityscapes are gorgeous. And then you find out that Everest has nature-bending powers, and the magic effects make things even more pretty. And granted, I may not be the most knowledgeable connoisseur of Chinese animation, but from what I have seen, they really seem to like their magic. And of course, there's a flying scene and the clouds, and this scene with the Buddha with the flowers and the violin, and oh my god, it's just so pretty, you guys! Now, it does have a bit of a idealistic tourism of China vibe, and if you didn't get it initially, don't worry, there's a scene with postcards that will spell it out for you. It doesn't surprise me, but I do find it a bit ironic considering Everest has become kind of disgusting because it's overflooded with tourists. Boy, it would have been an impressive twist if that had been the reason that the Yeti was in the city. In conclusion, as a narrative, it's nothing amazing, and as usual, I see no reason to rush to the theater to pay $10 for it. If anything, it reminds me when I used to watch those IMAX movies at the Science Center because the nature is beautiful and it has nice music and it's just very relaxing. just that this time there's also some decent comedy. And the ending left me feeling very uplifted and heartwarming, and sometimes that's just all we need. And yes, Angry Birds 2 was fine. It wasn't amazing, it was better than the first one, but that's it. It was fine. I didn't care for some of the tropes it used, but the comedic timing was mostly on point, so it was fine. And even though I had a full half an hour of recommending stuff to people, out of all the things that people commented that I didn't cover, the one that came up the most was a recent release on Cartoon Network called Mao Mao Heroes of Pure Heart. And Animaniacs, Mao Mao is amazing. Basically, it's a trio protecting a town of off-brand Care Bears from monsters and various joke villains, while having the typical kinds of lessons of the week, but while having some of the most entertaining, witty exchanges that includes a lot of yelling and small pinches of cynicism and threats of violence.
You know, I can make you a robot arm like mine. I just have to remove an arm.
Yes, please!
No!
Basically, if TTG was structured, less random, and were actually trying to make their characters likable. That is not a diss, that's just not what that show is trying to do. And that's it. Comment, like, subscribe, etc., and you stay incredibly shiny, Animaniacs.